Yes, hello, it's another Confessions podcast here. What an extraordinary week of terribleness. The Radio 2 listener has been as sinful as ever. This week's concise collection includes a shoe-shuffling shamble, the great galoshes grab, a posh perfume pong, and a classic Croquembouche creation. Plus, as a bonus, don't miss Matt's middle-aged muslin mishap right at the end. Who will you forgive? Here it all comes. The Dean of Deadliness is here, along with Brother Matthew and Sister Rebecca. Sorry. Oh. This is from Dom. That's who it's from. Dom. Dear Father Simon and the Cool Caring Collective. Ooh. My tale of pain, discomfort and dishonesty dates to the mid-1990s. For the purposes of this confession, I'd like to be known as Dom, as this is my name, a shortened version of it anyhow. Having just finished university in Sheffield, like most ex-students, the grim reality of poverty and nagging parents forced a concerted job search. After several failed attempts to land an interview, a famous vacuum cleaner company invited me, along with around 12 other candidates, down to an assessment day. This would consist of psychometric tests, an hour-long interview, group exercises, exactly. And a presentation test. In short, says Dom, hell.
Yes.
That's not forgetting the obligatory find X amount of information about the person sitting next to you and relay the information back to the group. In short, says Dom, double hell.
Dull.
After hearing numerous vacuum cleaner jokes, it must be good money, you'll clean up. You know the job will suck, and so on. I borrowed a suit and rustled up a decent shirt and tie combo. The company's head office was nearish to Swindon, which necessitated a fairly lengthy train journey with a couple of changes. The one missing element in my armoury was a new pair of shoes. So 30 minutes before my train was due to leave and 50 minutes before it actually left, I headed into the local town centre to pick up some footwear.
It's cutting it a bit fine.
That's what I was thinking, yes. Yeah. On locating a shop, I was keen to impress my prospective new employers with my purchase. I quickly tried on a shoe before paying the shop assistant. I paid £20. As mentioned earlier, I was keen to impress and no expense was to be spared. The train journey and short taxi ride to the hotel I was being put up in were fairly uneventful. Nerves were building ahead of the big day, so after a fitful sleep and decent fry-up, I attempted to make myself look presentable. After getting myself suited, my attentions turned to being booted. Upon opening the box, I put on the right shoe and discovered to my horror that it was a size 9. Oh. Now I'm a 10 and a half, so forcing my pinkies into said shoe was a feat in itself, if you see what I mean. It was also extremely painful. But my tatty trainers wouldn't cut the mustard, so I was just going to have to grin and bear it. And after a sharp intake of breath, prepared to don the left shoe. Incredibly, the left shoe wasn't a size 9 either. It wasn't a size 10 and a half. It was actually a size 12 and a half.
12 and a half? Are these clowns' shoes?
I considered heading straight back up north before once again deciding to grimace and bear it. So with a right foot in serious pain and my left clown foot slipping around in a size only suitable for basketball players, I headed off to my date with destiny.
Excellent.
It's a very fine image, but you're right, we're sort of clown size.
Well, go for it. Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, the day was not a lot of fun. We were shown around the head office, and each time we halted, I'd move my left foot back about 3 inches, so that at least in appearance it didn't stick out like a sore thumb. In fact, I was attempting to make sure it stuck out as far as my sore foot. In the interview, I managed to work my right shoe off and then back on at the end. Thankfully, the day eventually ended. Before the result came in, I was keen to get back my £20. So I took the offending shoes back to the shop. I'm sorry, said the shop assistant, we can't accept these back, they've been worn. You cannot be serious, I replied in my best John McEnroe impersonation. One's a size 9 and the other's a size 12 and a half. I'm a 10 and a half. Who in their right mind would wear odd-sized shoes when neither is the right size? Well, indeed, who would? The assistant spoke to the store manager, who, in no uncertain terms, told her to refund my £20. Oh. And so, you see my problem. I need forgiveness and I need to ask for it on bended knee, not to my interviewer, who must have been slightly uncomfortable, though not as uncomfortable as I, when watching me wriggle around trying to get my right shoe on and off, but for causing the shop assistant to receive a serious rollicking. I trust the collective and listening multitudes will find it in their collective hearts to forgive me. By the way, remarkably, I was offered the job. So I like the image very much of Dom struggling there with one shoe off and one shoe on, diddle diddle dumpling, etc. With a big clown size on one and a bone-crushing shoe on the other. What do you make of that, Sister
Well,
Rebecca?
Dom bought a pair of shoes for £20,
Yes.
and then he didn't check that they were the right shoes. I think
No.
that's quite sloppy of him.
Well, he
really.
didn't have enough time.
I know he was in a hurry, but still, and he should have tried on both shoes and made sure they were the right size. I don't really understand how the mix-up happened. I mean, the shop assistant was right to say that he couldn't return them because he'd worn them. I mean, who would have worn them, for goodness sake, when they discovered they were different sizes? But I guess he had to do it. On the other hand, the customer's always right, so I'm a bit torn about this. I think, oh dear, I forgive you, Dom, because I can't decide.
Well, let's see what Deadly thinks.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I think, the shop assistant, it's just one of those things.
No, it's not one of those things.
It is one of those things.
If you wear
the customer
shoes,
is always right.
that is nonsense. That is total nonsense. If you've worn the shoes, you can't take them back.
He needed them
But you
back.
can't
He
take them
needed
back.
It's an
That's
absolute
it.
crisis. Yes, you can.
Why?
Well, some stores you can. They don't bother. They'd rather have you coming back another time than you walking off forever and a day.
The shop assistant.
They want you coming back.
Which stores do you go to?
Yeah.
That's
Well, it's not far from here.
well, the morals of the sewer from Deadly and from Rebecca. Clearly nothing matters. So let's see.
How dare you?
Well,
Matthew.
having been on both sides of the till, this idea that the customer's always right is absolute nonsense because they're not.
We are.
Some of them are absolute nightmare. It's the shop assistant's fault. Don't they do this thing anyway when you buy shoes? Is that when you've got the box, they open the box and then start checking the shoes. And so she should have done that, shouldn't she? She should go, oh, hang on,
No, but
one
he
of
said he
these
was
is
in a hurry.
massive,
He said
and the
he
other
was in
one's
a hurry.
well, I know you're in a hurry, sir, but I need to check as I am the shop assistant and that's the only job I've got to do. And I'm failing miserably at it. And if these are the wrong size shoes, I will deserve any kind of dressing down I get from my employer.
Oh, so you're gonna forgive?
I am going to forgive him because it's entirely down to her.
So here's tonight's tale, and it comes from Anna. Thank you very much indeed for tonight's confession. Dear Father, gather round everyone. Dear Father Mayo, and the forgiving, understanding, charming and good-looking confession.
Yes.
Oh, yes, flattery will get you everywhere.
That. I listened to the confession last Tuesday and heard about Des and his friend hiding behind a Cumbrian stone wall without trousers, pretending to be a couple. You remember that one?
No, I don't
It made me well, you should have been in last week.
I might listen to that one again.
It was an all-time classic.
Yeah, I bet.
And contained the line, let's pretend we're a couple. Okay, behind the stone wall.
Noted.
It made me laugh out loud until I remembered my own Cumbrian confession. And my blood ran cold as I recollected the details which I had subconsciously blocked from my mind.
My mind.
It was the autumn of 1994 and I was newly married to a Cumbrian, and still married. We were visiting the lakes for a long weekend to visit the in-laws and to wander lonely as a cloud, hand in hand and all that.
Yep.
It just so happened that some friends of ours were also visiting Cumbria that same weekend. Names have been changed here to protect their identities, as they now hold respectable jobs and marriages, although not to each other, I might add. Gary had been the best man at our wedding. He was a lifelong friend of my husband and a fellow Cumbrian. Amanda was a very close friend of mine who came from London and lived, shall we say, a sophisticated lifestyle involving wine bars and dinner dates and shopping and that kind of thing. I should tell you they were having a thing together, having met and got to know each other rather well at our wedding party. So on the Sunday of the long weekend, we agreed to meet for drinks in a local pub with plans to walk up Melbreck. The scene of the crime was a tiny inn near Loweswater. I got that right? Is it Loweswater?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
just checking. It's a fabulous spot for lunch and walking, attracting locals and tourists kitted out in barber jackets, tweed, expensive wellies and walking boots. And so we arrived. Husband and I wore the obligatory brown woolly scarf and hiking boots with socks rolled up over our trousers. We were proper country folk for the weekend at least. We arrived at the pub, ordered ourselves a drink and waited for the arrival of Gary and Amanda, chuckling to ourselves as we hadn't seen them since the affair had begun a few weeks earlier. Well, they arrived. Amanda was dressed to impress. You have to remember that not only was she a London girl, but she'd also planned her weekend wardrobe to the minute detail to ensure that she looked fabulous and sexy at every opportunity. She was wearing a soft grey silk shirt, cashmere cardigan, white velvet jeans, and brand new, spotless, wheat-coloured suede boots.
Spotless might have something to do with it.
Suede boots, made by a famous manufacturer.
Spotless, then.
She looked absolutely gorgeous, but was completely inappropriately dressed for a smoky pub and for the muddy walk. And it was a wet and rainy Cumbrian afternoon. After our lunch of tatty pot and Cumberland sausage and mash, we decided it was time to walk off our excess.
Good.
I expressed concern about Amanda's white velvet jeans and boots, and she admitted that the boots were brand new, straight from the box, which was still in the back of the car, hence I know that they were wheat-coloured. She also quietly expressed concern about how the weekend had been progressing. She hadn't exactly hit it off with the mother-in-law-to-be, had found the wind and rain and dirt somewhat depressing, and she suggested that perhaps Gary wasn't quite as handsome, dashing and charming as he had been after 6 glasses of champagne, 4 vodkas and cokes, 3 Baileys and an ice and a cup of tea.
Other drinks are available.
In the event that she and Gary were unlikely to last, she questioned whether she would ever need to wear wheat-coloured boots for hiking ever again, and she might do well to put them back in their box with the label and get a refund. It was awkward. I was torn between wanting to get the views from the top of Melbrick before the sunset and burning off that large tatty pot lunch, and looking after my friend whose weekend of romance was falling flat indeed, and fat. So this is where I need your forgiveness for the sin I'm about to share. I excused myself from the table, pretending to visit the ladies, but instead I slipped outside the front door of the pub towards the car park. The inn is a relaxed and informal country pub, one where the spaniels and labradors lie quietly at their owners' feet, and although there are stone floors and wooden benches to accommodate the spaniels, labradors and owners, the customers are generally a polite bunch who leave their muddy boots in the front porch before entering the pub in socked feet. Okay. So as I stepped outside, there was a large collection of hiking boots, Wellington boots and general country footwear scattered around the hallway. It only took a few moments to identify a pair of size 6 Wellingtons, slip them under my arm, walk to the car parked a few yards away and deposit them in my boot. I returned to our table via the toilet, where husband and Gary were splitting the bill, and Amanda and I were still looking anxious about her soft suede boot dilemma. As we made to leave, I casually mentioned that it was possible that I had a spare pair of boots in the back of my car, and did she want me to take a look? Well, of course she did, and of course I had that spare. And they were exactly the right size for Amanda because I had stolen them just a few moments before. She, Gary and husband were all relieved and grateful. I had saved the day and we had a wonderful walk in the autumn sunshine. For a moment, Gary and Amanda looked blissfully happy walking ahead of me hand in hand, although Amanda did have blood and cowpat splattered up her white velvet jeans.
Blood?
Did I say blood?
Yes.
Yeah, where did that come in?
Mud.
Oh, right.
Add blood. Let's just add some blood.
Turned into a slaughter.
Mud.
I put it to you, my lad.
Cowpat and blood splattered up her white jeans. That's much better.
Yeah.
We returned to our car and ultimately to our suburban lives and Monday to Friday city commutes, and for Amanda and Gary to their single lifestyles. So now, prompted by the confession today, I write for forgiveness 20 years late to the size 6-footed Cumbrian fell walker who popped into this little inn one Sunday lunchtime in the autumn of 1994. I'm so sorry that you couldn't find your boots. I had stolen them. I hope your friend or husband didn't get cross with you and blame you for carelessness. I hope your feet didn't get too wet and cold, and I really, really hope that your car was parked in the nearby car park so that you didn't have far to hobble rather than the other end of Loweswater Lake. Please forgive me. It's Anna, who basically stole some boots. I mean, that's the bottom line. Sister Rebecca expecting a stern line.
Well, Amanda doesn't sound very practical, and she wasn't really very nice about Gary either. I think she should have been made to make her own decision about whether to return the boots or not, and she shouldn't have been helped out by her friend Anna. And to steal some poor customer's wellies, I mean, the whole point about leaving your boots at the entrance is that you trust everyone not to steal them. So the fact that she, crossed that line, I think is completely unforgivable. So sorry, Anna, you're not forgiven.
6 glasses of champagne, 4 vodka and cokes, 3 Baileys and ice and a cup of tea usually leads to problems just like this, Alan.
This is terrible.
As you
Yeah,
tell me
absolutely. I can't
regularly.
forgive either. I can't forgive. You can't just walk off with somebody else's boots and not return them in any sort of shape or form. That's terrible.
She was trying to help. She was moved with
No,
compassion.
I noted that. She saved the day, apparently. That was the phrase used.
Yes.
But she ruined somebody else's. Where are my boots? What if the person was on their own? They would have had to trot out into the mud. Obviously, Matt would have carried the person out to...
Brother Matthew now speaks.
A reasonable person would say that Anna was absolutely wrong to nick someone else's boots. However, I'm going to direct my ire very much at Amanda, who apparently is so sophisticated because she can eat and go shopping, but also decides to wear white trousers when you're going to go walking, and also I'm going to wear nonsense boots. I having lived in Cumbria and seen these people waltzing up Scarfell Pike wearing wearing sandals and shorts and wondering why they get into trouble. Well, this is why. It's because of people like Amanda who don't belong outside on their own. So I am going to say,
in London.
Stay in London, where you can wear as many suede boots as you like, and no one's going to dirty up your white trousers. I am going to forgive, just for that.
What?
Father Simon and the esteemed members of the collective, I bring you a confession which I suspect may be one of the oldest you have received, occurring as it did some 45 years ago or more. But there's no statute of limitations on these things. It doesn't matter. I've decided at this very late stage in life to come clean, because it also features my elder sister. And let's face it, if I don't fess up now, she might not be around much longer to hear it. Says Diana. I was a precocious 8-year-old, the youngest of 5 by a considerable margin. The sibling nearest in age to me was my sister Sarah, who was at the time 19 years old, still living at home and widely regarded by everyone who met her to be an outstanding beauty. She was a goddess in my eyes, and I loved and envied everything about her: her clothes, her shoes, her makeup, and especially the way she smelled. At the time of my misdemeanour, Sarah had a boyfriend who travelled in ladies' makeup, which is a phrase that means he was a sales rep for a leading cosmetics company. Imagine that. Why didn't you say, I'm a sales rep for a leading cosmetics company? But no, he travelled in ladies' makeup, which could be misinterpreted. On the occasion of her 19th birthday, he presented Sarah with a bottle of very expensive perfume. You know the one, so exclusive they gave it a number. The whole family was mightily impressed by the gift, but for me the perfume became a focal point of my very existence. I yearned for it, I dreamt of it, I begged for just a dab, just a sniff, but Sarah would have none of it. She told me, with all the affection and tenderness that an older sister could muster, that she would cut off my ears and make me eat them if she so much as found me in the same room as the magic bottle. However, on one particular Saturday afternoon when Sarah was at work, I found myself alone in the house with my best friend Molly. Molly was, as stated, my best friend, but it has to be added she was also a bad influence. Having spent a happy few hours playing houses and shops and nurses and other assorted innocent activities, we came to a decision to play dressing up. And the obvious source of our wardrobe was Sarah's bedroom. Therein lay all the glamorous stuff we could desire: shoes, frocks, hats, and those most wondrous of grown-up garments, corsets. Really? Anyway, it didn't take much raking around in there before we came across the hidden sacred bottle. And I looked at it, and Molly looked at it. In spite of my warnings about how furious Sarah would be if we touched it, Molly was as fascinated as I was. She wouldn't know if we just had a drop, would she? Molly asked. I was pretty sure that she would, and I was kind of attached to my ears and wanted to keep them. But after a bit of cajoling and name-calling from Molly, cowardly custard, as I recall, I eventually agreed that we would just have a drop. Well, I was now persuaded that she wouldn't miss this tiny amount. Just to be on the safe side, though, I decided to take the bottle down to my dad's shed at the bottom of the garden, where we could conduct ourselves in private and where we were unlikely to be stumbled upon by anyone returning home unexpectedly. There is disaster on the way. Yeah. So with the bottle on the workbench in the shed, Molly and I looked at each other nervously. Taking the top off, Molly pressed her wrist to the opening and nothing came out. On closer inspection, we realised there was a small plastic stopper preventing the contents from escaping. Molly slid her thumbnail carefully under the stopper, and then 3 things happened in quick succession.
Oh, no.
The stopper popped out, hitting me in the eye, at which I stepped back, crashing into the spade and rake that was hanging on the shed wall. And Molly, thinking the crash was Sarah trying to get in and catching us in the act, instinctively flicked the bottle away from her to the end of the shed, where it landed upside down behind some bits of old wood.
Of course,
it's like a Tom and Jerry episode. Yeah. Molly and I looked at each other in horror, and then with a howl of anguish, we scuttled under the workbench and frantically tried to retrieve the bottle. Unfortunately, by the time we managed to dig it out, the entire contents had spilled out onto the floor of the shed. The bottle was empty. As you can imagine, we were panic-stricken. Eventually, we decided that the only option was to try and replace the contents with something that resembled expensive perfume.
Of course.
But what? We tried water. Wasn't the same. We toyed with diluted orange juice, which didn't look right, and Ajax cleaner, which didn't smell right either, funnily enough. At last, after an extensive search of the house that included my dad's drinks cupboard, we found something that was kind of the right colour and didn't smell too industrial. Father Simon and members of the collective, we used Cinzano Bianco. It was exactly the colour of the original perfume, and it had a slightly oily texture which looked much more authentic than anything else we could find. Having refilled the bottle, we replaced it in my sister's bedroom where we had found it. That evening I waited for the inevitable eruption, but it never came. My sister prepared herself for that night's date as usual, finishing off with a liberal dab of
Cinzano.
on each wrist and behind her ears, and appeared not to notice the difference. And as far as I know, she never did, although her reputation did seem to take a bit of a knock. For reasons she never quite understood. So my plea for forgiveness is primarily for stealing from my sister when I should have known better, but also I need forgiveness from my dad, God rest his soul, who never understood why his garden shed had begun to smell like a tart's boudoir. I should also mention that my sister did eventually break up with the cosmetic salesman, and not long after gave me the envied bottle of perfume for my very own. She'd come to dislike it. Apparently every time she wore it, she was attacked by wasps. Which is That's a humdinger of an ender, Diana. Thank you very much indeed.
So nice of her to give it to her sister then.
Yeah, I
you
don't
can
like
be attacked by wasps.
Yeah, exactly. See how you like it. Anyway, it's a good old tale from Diana. What do you think, Sister Rebecca?
Well, I have an older sister, and I remember coveting a lot of her possessions. Weirdly, I used to really want her scissors. She had some really nice scissors.
Really?
Yeah, I used to kind of
You're
just
easily
dream
pleased.
about them. I know, I really was. Anyway, I think, so I completely understand this, and she didn't mean to empty the bottle all over the shed, and I thought her attempts to replace it with diluted orange juice in the night were very, very sweet. I think if the sister didn't realise that her posh perfume was actually Cinzano, then it's not a problem, is it? And as I said before, she just gave it to her because she wanted her to be attacked by wasps. So I think
Yes.
for all those reasons, you're forgiven.
I wonder why they tried Ajax Cleaner in the first place. You wouldn't want to put that behind your ears. What do you think, Brother Matthew?
You've got to wonder about the sister's palate. I mean, I'm not very discerning myself, but I think I'd be able to tell the difference between perfume and Cinzano Bianco. But also, Dad comes out of this very well. Dad's shed now smells very nice. In my experience, sheds don't smell great.
Well, now it does, yeah.
But now it smells fabulous. However, I don't buy this idea that it was all Molly's idea. I think Sarah knows exactly what she's doing, or Diana rather knows exactly what she's doing when she takes her bad friend into and says, "Oh, look at her! They've got the old perfume over there. I wonder what would happen if we down to the shed." So I'm going to say not forgiven because you knew what you were doing.
This one comes from Helen, an alias, just in case. She's provided her own alias, but we've probably changed it. And one day we're going to do that and change it back to the original and get into trouble. Dear Father Simon, it's another Foodie Thursday confession, by the way.
Perfect.
Please help me cleanse my conscience and admit my misdemeanour anonymously to the police personnel and potentially their families who attended an awards ceremony somewhere up north in the mid-90s. I was the catering manager, and I created and produced a lovely buffet menu for an auspicious award ceremony being held at the Force's gorgeous HQ in an old country hall, which I would imagine has narrowed it down quite a lot. I came up with the idea of creating a croquembouche, that classic French patisserie delight, a towering pyramid of glistening profiteroles laced in spun sugar. Have you ever made a croquembouche?
I've eaten plenty. Never made. So you get them at weddings normally in France. There you go.
So how tall would a croquembouche
gosh, could be foot and a half more. In metric, a lot of centimetres.
Thanks, you didn't really help there, did you? This was to be my dessert table centrepiece, with the little bowls of tasty profiteroles around it for the guests to devour. My plan was to build it with seconds, the not quite perfect profiteroles, and use my best ones as the puds. Try as I might, I just could not get the stack of profiteroles to hold, and time was running out fast. I had to think outside the box. What could I use to support my croquembouche as a kind of scaffold, perhaps? I went home tired and stressed, and I took my boxer dog for a walk. My boxer dog is called Buster, and I took off his conical collar as we were going off for a walk. And hey presto, there it was in my hands. The conical collar of the boxer dog. I rolled it and squeezed it and masking taped it down, it was quite resistant, into a perfect cone, albeit not a very pretty one. I covered it in gold wrapping paper, took it to work early the next morning and stuck the profiteroles on. Wow, looked great. However, when I say stuck, it wasn't stuck with anything culinary. PVA glue seemed to work very well. The profiteroles, but I should mention at this time, were very, very dry. But I never I never, ever intended it to be eaten. It was just to look pretty. Otherwise, I'd have washed the collar in the first place and done something about the dog's fleas, which he'd had for years. By the way, did you know that a dog can produce 4,000 egg fleas an hour in fur? Anyway, obviously the dog doesn't produce the eggs, it's the flea that produces the... We get the picture. Anyway, I gave it a crown of spun sugar, and off it went. Pride of place. Anyhow, the awards were awarded. The super smart police officers and their super proud families trooped into the dining hall and helped themselves to what I must say was a lovely hot and cold buffet lunch. I was serving the salmon, but I could see the dessert table. I couldn't leave my post. Obviously, I had too much to do. What could I possibly have said? So I stood and sweated and silently watched as the guests plucked the profiteroles off my dog collar tower with added polyvinyl acetate glue and dog fleas, and they ate every one. So, Father Simon and the pudding-loving posse, I now belatedly seek forgiveness for my trickery from you on behalf of all the poor people who may have had digestion problems for a couple of days, and whose eyes I completely clouded with my culinary cheaty ways. And from Buster, my big old dearly departed boxer, who for a day didn't have his vet collar on and managed to unpick quite a few stitches, therefore ending up needing restitching, but I won't mention where. I have comforted myself over these many years with the thought that PVA glue is used by children, so therefore can't be that toxic, and that I only heard good things about the day. Maybe they were just too polite to say otherwise, and that Buster was a happy boy without his collar and would forgive me anything anyway. Yours, no longer in the catering trade, just in case people were worrying. Helen. So, Helen, she had a problem with her croquembouche. How'd you get it all to stick? You use a flea-bitten dog conical collar. That's what you use, and PVA glue. Take it away.
She could have had a sign on it saying something like, just for display, but that would have looked really naff, don't you think? I think she did cover the collar in gold paper, didn't she? So the fleas wouldn't have been directly in contact with the profiteroles. And I think she's right about the PVA. I mean, I don't know, Nigel, I wouldn't say that was toxic. Anyway.
I encourage that. Would you stick a profiterole with a bit of...
No, I'm vacillating here. As you speak, thinking, yeah, it's fine, no fleas. I'm thinking, no, you don't make a croquembouche
she didn't mean for
way.
the things to be eaten. So, she didn't intend all this to happen, and so I've got to forgive you. There was no illness involved, was there?
Well, as far as she knows. The thing is, the croquembouche is such a gorgeous, delicate delight, and then stuck together with grotty old glue.
Yeah, so that's the point. As a chef, you'd make it as a croquembouche, which is a pyramid of profiteroles.
What should she have used?
She should have used one or the other, and made sure they were really cold as well, so that they stuck together. Once they get too warm, they'll all just start to melt.
With what, though?
No, that's what you do. You stick them with the stuff you make them with. So in this, it can be a coffee or a chocolate one, normally a coffee one. So the coffee sauce would actually blend them together. You put them in the fridge, and they bind together. But she could have said, "No, stop!" But a bit like Matt last night, it was too late.
Yes.
So
let's bring it back to that.
Yes, we probably will on a daily basis.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think she could have said, no, and so don't eat that, sorry, and rushed over. But she didn't, and fleas and everything went with it.
Am I the only one who thinks that croquembouche sounds a bit saucy?
Yes, in the mouth.
Yes. Profiteroles, I could eat profiteroles until the end of time. If diet allowed and my wife allowed, I would only eat profiteroles. So I'm going to say, frankly, I'm not in any position to not forgive tonight, so I'm definitely going to forgive.
Isn't the whole point of the 5 and 2 is that you can eat as many profiteroles as you like, as long as you go starving on the 5th day, isn't that? Or the 6th
Yes, that's exactly how it works.
Well,
That's what it says in the book.
That's what to get Matt for Christmas.
Yes.
A whole
croquembouche for me.
Full of profiteroles. Last night, at a Radio 2 gathering, a bad thing happened. And one of our members of this show needs to confess to another member of the Radio 2 community. The other member of the Radio 2 community is Annika Rice, and it involves Matthew Williams, who has this to say.
Yes, all the station's presenters, as you said, were gathered, including the superb broadcaster and all-round fantastic human being, Annika Rice, who is also, it turns out, a big fan of our show, and in particular, the confession slot. Now, I hadn't had any lunch, so I was devouring some canapes, and Annika was telling me and Rebecca how she should submit a confession, at which point my enthusiasm got the better of me because I blurted out, "Wow, that would be amazing," but being the ill-mannered oaf that I am, I hadn't finished my mouthful, and I peppered Annika Rice with canape. I then panicked and tried to clean it off her lapel, which was even worse, before Rebecca ordered me to go and get some napkins. By the time I got back, her top was clean again. Annika laughed it off because she's a wonderful person, but I was mortified. I spent the rest of the night apologising. I seek Annika's forgiveness again. I did not have any more canapes.
Well, that's the tale. I have to say that from my point of view, it was less canape and more phlegm. Let's be straightforward about it. We don't know.
No.
The first thing Annika said to me was, "I don't know whether it's come from his nose or his mouth."
No, it wasn't as bad as that.
That's what I'm just quoting. That's how bad it was. And everyone stood around saying, "Is anyone going to tell Annika?" Anyway, you were there, Rebecca.
I was there. I was a witness. I have to say that was almost the funniest thing I have ever seen in my life. It was just hilarious because everyone saw it happen. And then there was this globule of white stuff on Annika's lapel. And it was a matter of etiquette. Nobody knew whether they should say anything and point it out. And then it was obvious that it just couldn't be ignored. So we all started laughing hysterically. And then Matt was rooted to the spot.
Well, you don't want to stare at Annika Rice's lapel.
That was funny because he just wouldn't move until I ordered him to the bar. I said, Matt, go and do something about it.
Nige was there as well.
Yeah, well, I walked in as she was being hosed down at this stage as Matt had gone. But then, fortunately, Annika never travels anywhere without a whole selection of different jumpsuits. So by the time you come back, what you didn't know, she'd actually changed into another one.
Oh, right, OK.
And decorum had been restored, but frightfully embarrassing, basically. I don't know how you'll get over it.
I won't.
Well, I'm going to forgive you because Annika would forgive you.
I'm sure she would.
Because Annika really likes the show.
Oh, good.
I'm going to forgive because it was so funny.
Thank you.
I'm not going to forgive.
Oh, right.
Because I've never seen someone ram so much food in their mouth in such a greedy fashion.
Well, that was this week's collection. Who did you forgive? Let us know. And most importantly, send us your confession. We know that you've been holding it back. This is the week to tell us. confessions@bbc.co.uk. More undoings for you next week. And don't forget, the Weekly Mayo is available now and every Thursday at all good newsagents. Thank you.